The Mariners have acquired Randy Arozarena.
It is day 3 of Big Ten Media Days.
Dylan Cease making history, no hitter.
The Raiders are pissed off and they had no problem speaking on it.
Well, it was Kershaw Day for the first time in a long, long time.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Mariners have acquired Randy Arozarena.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's about 7 months later than we thought it would have been. But finally, Randy Arozarena is a Seattle Mariner. Colby, what do you think?
Yeah, it's exciting and it's hilarious because, this winter we had heard that the Mariners were really interested in Randy Arozarena, but then we also heard from people who would know that the Mariners' interest in Randy Arozarena never really was there. Like, they just didn't care that much about Randy. He wasn't a target of theirs this winter. And, now he's here. And that's also a couple days ago, we saw a report that, the Mariners, they don't actually even want any of the Rays right-handed bats. They're interested in the left-handed bats only. Mm-hmm. And now 2 days later, they acquire a right-handed bat, a guy who they may or may not have liked this winter. And it just goes to show this time of year, nobody really knows anything until it's official. And this deal is official. It has been announced by the Mariners. So it's officially official. And the Mariners acquire not one, not two, but 3 chances with Randy Arozarena.
Yes.
3 playoff chases. They will have Randy Arozarena if they so choose. Obviously, there's, ARB, and they can trade him again, blah, 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 and all that. But Randy Arozarena is a Seattle Mariner. The Mariners, I don't want to say they have their Robin to Julio's Batman, but they do have a guy.
That's the idea.
Right. They do have a guy who does have some star power. He has personality. He's pretty well liked across the league as far as we know. I believe him and Julio are actually pretty close, like off the field. Randy Arozarena, by the way, a career 289, 333, 511 hitter at T-Mobile Park. Now, granted, that's only 48 plate appearances, but whatever. It seems relevant, right? With all the discourse about Randy, that this guy has had success at T-Mobile Park.
Well, just general with hitters, right? Like anytime they add a hitter, you never know. I literally tweeted this. Like, again, we got very excited about Jorge Polanco and Mitch Garver and all these guys that were coming off really good seasons and had track record, especially Polanco, who was consistently a really good hitter and had rarely ever experienced like this up and down type of thing that some of the other hitters that the Mariners have brought in. And yet we've seen what's happened with. So yeah, you have to always add that caveat. You don't know how these guys are going to adapt to playing in T-Mobile Park for most of their game, especially a guy like Randy, who's going from, Tropicana Field, an indoor stadium, to, the confines of T-Mobile Park in Seattle, Washington. So and obviously he got off to a rough start this year. Right.
Which caveat to that is, like, the one thing we're doing right now is we're breaking down numbers because he got off to a really rough start, but since June 1, he's hitting 290, 402, 517.
Yep.
So pretty much 2 months now, he's been an all-star quality hitter.
He really flipped the switch on June 14th. And since then, he's running a 180 WRC plus. It's 301, 403, 575 slash line, which, that's automatically the Mariners' best hitter by far. Right.
And again, even with his struggles in the first half, if you look at the totality of his season, he would still be the best hitter on the Mariners. Even with no qualifier, just his season as a whole. That says more about the Mariners' offense than it does.
Yeah, because overall on the season, he's just a 110 WRC plus bat, which is good.
Which is good. It's good.
Yeah. Compared to what the rest of the Mariners lineup looks like, that's a Hall of Famer.
Right. He had some swing and miss issues early. Those have been, more or less corrected. He's never going to strike out. Like, he will strike out on occasion, but for the most part, he's going to put the ball in play. He's going to hit the ball hard. There's some athleticism here too. He can steal some bags. He's a pretty good base runner. So yeah, the idea here is pretty simple. This is this is the Batman to Julio's, or the Robin to Julio's Batman. Like this is the sidekick, right? Obviously, Arozarena is not the perfect player. There's defensive issues there. He's never really quite, like, we're still kind of waiting for a true breakout season from Randy Arozarena, and he's 29 years old. So like, it's probably not going to happen to the point where, like, we're probably not ever going to see playoff Randy, that, bubble Randy, whatever you want to call him. We're probably never going to see that over the course of an entire season in his career. This is still a very good hitter. This is a guy who, in a good lineup, would hit probably 4 or 5, maybe 2, depending on where you're at. In the Mariners lineup, he's probably going to hit 3, unless there are more moves to be made, which we'll get to later. But yes, Randy Arozarena is a Seattle Mariner. That's great. At the end of the day, this is exactly the type of player you need. Do you need more like it? Sure. But for a first step, for the first splash, really, Arozarena is a great fit for the clubhouse. As far as we know, he seems to like hitting in the ballpark. It doesn't seem to bother him. Again, small sample size. He's on fire right now, which is something we talked about. You don't want to go acquire somebody and then try and fix him. You want somebody who's hitting now. And Randy Arozarena does that. Again, it appears that this is a really good fit with Julio. So there shouldn't be any issues there. So while there are some concerns, the defense, I mean, you don't want to say like the production is a concern, because he's been like 120 every year. It's just like, he's not a star that we thought he might be, but he's still a very good player who's still in his athletic prime. And you get him again, cannot stress this enough, not for 1, not for 2, but for 3 playoff races. And that is, it's a really good deal. And again, focus on what you got. The Mariners didn't get him for free. And I've seen some people out there saying the Mariners fleeced the Rays. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And we still don't know what the player to be named later is.
And that could be huge. It could be nothing. It could be huge. So
I mean,
we don't.
One of the last times they had a player to be named later, that turned out to be Connor Phillips, who was a significant prospect at the time.
Sure. Didn't end up hurting him that bad, but it is what it is. We have to wait and see who the player to be named later is. But at the end of the day, did the Seattle Mariners get better today with this 100%. Trade? The answer is yes. And not only did they get better for 2024, they got better in theory. It's all theory, but they got better in 2025 and 2026 as well.
Well, that's the key to this, right? Because even if this season does still go sideways, you have him for another run and another run after that. Like, you had to at least come away from this deadline with 1 controllable bat beyond this season. You had to. So you've got 1, and now there's the possibility here for more. We'll get to that later on in the show. But next, I want to talk about what the Mariners are giving up. Let's get into that a little bit more.
One quick side note.
Sure.
Before we go, just because it's fun.
Yes.
Mariners trying to chase down a playoff spot here. They have their best shot to win the division in 20 years. If they can get there, Randy Arozarena has the 3rd highest slugging percentage in playoff history. Minimum of 100 plate appearances. Randy Arozarena is slugging 690 in the playoffs. The 2 guys ahead of him, again, all the caveats apply here, but the 2 guys ahead of him, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig. This guy performs in the playoffs. So it's all theoretical. His performance, all of it is theoretical. But what we know today is a really exciting time for the Mariners. It's a really exciting night for the Mariners, day for the Mariners. And at the very least, right, I don't know if he's going to be in the lineup tonight. I'm guessing by the time you guys are listening / watching this, it'll be tonight. But he's going to be in the lineup this weekend, and he should help a ton.
No football, no NBA, no problem with FanDuel. With baseball, the Olympics, WNBA should be back soon. There's plenty to dive into over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. The Jacksonville Jaguars, despite their offseason moves, are right on the playoff bubble. FanDuel has the Jags plus 118 to make the playoffs, as well as the second best odds to win the AFC South at plus 270. The Houston Texans are division favorites, plus 105. If you're a Texans fan, like our editor, Lance Daw, you may look at Houston's over-under. Their win total set at 9.5. So what are you waiting for? Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the moves that make the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
It is day 3 of Big Ten Media Days.
You are Locked On Wolverines,
your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines.
You've gotten to talk to a lot of people. Obviously, we're about to enter day 3 today, but so Michigan's going today. We haven't heard from them yet.
Right.
But out of the teams that you've seen so far, because you've met up with 12 teams so far out of the 18. Who's impressed you? Whether it's a coach or a player, who do you feel like has been more, maybe surprised you with their demeanor, just kind of their confidence or anything?
Yeah. I'll just try to give you an answer that's a little less obvious that you may not hear, and I'll start with Rutgers because I'm really falling in love with that team. And you just think about the context, playing in the Big Ten East, just brutal for Greg Schiano. They gave Michigan everything they could handle. That was a tough game. The final score doesn't show it, but Michigan fans were sweating. That was a tough game late into the second half. They did the same with Ohio State. Every year Rutgers has had to go through Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. That's brutal. Now they don't have to do it. They have a very favorable schedule. And Greg Schiano talks about his program as a developmental program, meaning they're not getting 5 stars that are going to play right away. They got to develop it. And I look at it as, Greg takes these recruits and he plants seeds into the soil. And at 4 years, the tree has grown and is bearing fruit. Now is the time for him to pick because the schedule's extremely favorable. Their 2 deep is loaded with seniors and experienced players. They return the Big Ten's leading rusher in Kyle Monangai, who for some reason we don't talk about. He's extremely underrated. And last year they had a great season with maybe the worst quarterback play in the Big Ten. They should improve. They can't get much worse. So all of a sudden you have a Rutgers team that is a punching bag for Big Ten fans. They like to make fun of Rutgers. Don't make fun of them this year. They'll beat your favorite team.
Now, speaking of favorite teams, Ohio State's one of yours. No, I'm just kidding.
We can't joke about that.
No one's going to say that. Michigan goes today. We saw, you and I, as we were setting up for this, we saw Max Bredesen and Makari Page come up. How cool is it, especially for a guy who, you were a tight end, you were a pass catcher, but you were also an inline blocker.
Yeah.
You don't normally see fullback tight end types. I mean, tight ends, yes, not necessarily fullbacks being representative. What does that say about Michigan and maybe the mentality under Sharon Moore being kind of the same?
It's a great question. And what you're alluding to is the way Michigan views themselves. By bringing in a fullback, we aren't, what Sharon is saying is we aren't cute. We aren't gonna tiptoe through the meadows. We're gonna run the ball right at you. And yes, we lost offensive line talent, but a lot of this offensive line is played and is talented. We're going to run the ball right at you and dare you to stop it. And I think one of the more underrated reasons you bring a guy like Max Bredesen in here, Mikey Sainristil is going to have a long NFL career. He's extremely talented, but he meant a lot more to Michigan last year. He was their emotional leader on the field. Leadership is a big reason Michigan has had success. Max Bredesen, I think, can be that emotional leader this year. I think back to the pancake block versus Caleb Downs in the Rose Bowl, which was not holding, ridiculous.
Right.
Those are the type of plays that get the sideline up, that get the rest of the offense up. This is going to be a long, competitive season, especially for Michigan. The schedule is extremely tough. A guy like Max Bredesen is going to bring a ton of value from an emotional standpoint, both blocking people as a fullback, also on special teams too.
All right, so we'll both have to pay Ben for asking about his little brother like he asked us to.
Yeah.
Of course, you played with Ben.
Yes.
So one of the things that I talked to Brad Nessler and Adam Zucker yesterday about from CBS was the fact that Sharon Moore seems like he's flying under the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think that's accurate? And Zucker said that's actually a good thing, right? That he isn't getting those first year accolades the same way. Ryan Day was in a similar situation, right?
Yeah.
We got Anthony Herron joining us briefly here.
The beard is always luscious in person, just as much as it looks like in the avatar.
Wherever football is, Anthony Herron will follow. That's just the truth.
That glue.
But anyway, back to Sharon. Sharon seems like he's flying under the radar, even though when Ryan Day took over Ohio State, there was this mentality kind of from a media perspective that he was as good, maybe even a step up in some ways from Urban Meyer based off of his interim stint.
Yeah.
You looked at Marcus Freeman. I mean, I remember watching the Ohio State-Notre Dame game, his first game in the regular season. Obviously had the bowl loss the year before as the interim coach. But I remember Chris Fowler saying these two damn good football coaches. We didn't know that yet of Marcus Freeman, yet he was given those accolades. It doesn't feel like Sharon is getting that benefit of the doubt, even though he has some bigger wins on his resume.
Right.
Do you think it's a good thing that he's flying under the radar a little bit, or what? How do you look at this?
It's a great thing. It's a great thing. You know, the best example is Tom Brady. You should leverage disrespect to your advantage in football. It is great to be pissed off, as long as you have the emotional maturity to control it. It's great to be pissed off. It's great to feel slighted. It's great to have a chip on your shoulder. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, and he still talks about how he's a 6th-round pick, you know? So Michigan's coming off a national championship run in which Sharon Moore had multiple opportunities to be the acting head coach on Saturday and won in big games. I mean, the decision to run the ball 30-plus straight times versus Penn State, that's a coaching decision. The decision to go for it back-to-back times on 4th and short against Ohio State, that's a coaching decision. Ryan Day decided to punt it at about the 50-yard line. So this isn't, Sharon has made big-time coaching decisions in the biggest games and has showed he's fearless. So it's great for him to fly under the radar. And you look at the roster, too, they're flying under the radar. Penn State was picked above them here in the media poll. I have to see it. I'm a see it to believe it type guy. I have to see it. Michigan went into their stadium last year and dominated them, and certainly Penn State's talented. But you look at this defense, I keep hearing Ohio State is the best defensive line in college football. I disagree. They're phenomenal. Josiah Stewart, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Derek Moore, those 4 guys, that was the 4 that was on the field for the 4th down stop versus Alabama. In the biggest moment, that was an elite Alabama offensive line, as was Washington. Those 4 were on the field. That's the best defensive line in college football. They talk about Jayshawn Barham like he's a 1st-round pick. They think he might be the most talented linebacker to come through mid. That's a big deal. Ernest Hausman is a stud. He's been waiting for his opportunity to be the starter. Will Johnson's the best corner in college football. The defense will keep him in every game. The question is, and I believe they'll be able to run the ball. The offensive line is experienced, and they got a deep running back room. We just have to see what happens if week 1, say it's Alex Orji comes out and plays a phenomenal game. The rest of the Big Ten and the rest of the country is going to be like, oh shit, excuse my French. They got it again. You know what I mean? If he comes out there and even plays like a B+ quarterback, the rest of the conference is going to have to say, oh shit, this Michigan team's going to be damn tough once again.
Dylan Cease making history, no hitter.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Where do I begin? First, let's start off soft. Before we really dig in, I just want to quickly just mention what else happened in this game, right? It wasn't anything crazy, but the Padres, they win by a score of 3, obviously 2-0. And the big hits coming from Donovan Solano. He goes 2 for 4 in this game, and he scores a run. Xander Bogaerts, he draws a walk and gets a single in this game as well. So Bogaerts, hey, he's not giving us like the doubles or the extra base hits that maybe we would like, but he's getting hits, he's getting on base, so that's nice to see so far. And then the hero of the game in the very first inning, which is the funniest part about this, is that the only scoring in this game is the first inning with the bases loaded. Ha-Seong Kim gets the bases clearing double, allowing all the runs to score, and he actually goes 2 for 4 on the day. He also gets a single later on. Love Ha-Seong Kim, and I tweeted out on Twitter, we got to be careful not to take that guy too much for granted. Right? Because while, yes, his batting average is a little bit down, his offensive, if people were expecting him to make another leap, the same way he made a leap last year in his offense, that seems to not have happened. And his batting average has been down, but he's still got an on-base percentage to make up for it. And that defense is still electric. But nonetheless, Ha-Seong Kim, the hero in terms of the offense of that day. And they really needed Dylan Cease to perform because, like I said, that was it for the rest of the game. Yeah, you had some hits from Donovan Solano. You had a hit from Jurickson Profar, a double, of course, because Profar is always there for us. But all in all, not a big offensive performance from the Padres, and that's one of the things we talked about, by the way, so it's still worth keeping an eye on. This team's ability to make lefties look a lot better than they are. Patrick Corbin goes deep into this game, as I kind of talked about with our guy, Ryan Clary of Locked On Nationals for the crossover preview, where we mentioned, I was like, hey man, I know Corbin's like the worst pitcher in baseball. I think since 2019, they said his ERA is like 6.15, something crazy like that. But in this game, 7 innings, 3 earned runs on 4 hits, 3 walks, 7 Ks. So like, again, just as a little bit of a criticism, the Padres did not hit well against the lefty, and it was a bad lefty. It's not like they were facing Chris Sale or anything like that, right? So just really, really rough performance from the offense. But of course, who cares? Let's talk about Dylan Cease. Look, there have been times that I've seen people complain about Cease. I understand, right? I understand part of it. And the big reason is that he does have these starts where you're like, what the heck? And he does have these starts where people have been telling and shouting about how this guy has Cy Young potential. And you look at it and it's like, yeah, he's only had an ERA below 4, like twice. And some people might look at that and say, well, look at this. Last year he has a 4.58. And then, the year before that, 3.91, even then. So people might be wondering, the Chris Archer allegations, who, for those who don't remember, Chris Archer got a lot of strikeouts and then fell off because he just had such a super high ERA that it didn't matter, right? Robbie Ray, I think, was like that a little bit, although he turned things around with the Mariners and certainly the Blue Jays when he won the Cy Young. But I think that there was some rightful criticism. His fastball velocity dipped down last year. But all in all, here's the thing. Bottom line is Dylan Cease, the one thing that I think that's hurt him this year is he's been giving up a lot more home runs than usual. Home run fly ball rate, his home runs per 9 inning last year was 0.97, and the year before that was 0.78. So this year it's 1.11. So he's been giving up a higher home run rate, just to simplify it, I guess, right? So that's not great, but it's still not that high. And most importantly, he's not walking as many batters, right? That's the biggest difference between him and last year, is that the K rate is certainly up 32.5% this year. And then his walk rate 7.6% compared to 10% the previous year. So awesome stuff for him. Really good stuff. I will say that while, yes, he has those annoying little blips, while he does have those moments, and he's going to have another stretch, I bet you by the end of the season. But as we talked about after the Mets sweep, if you guys remember that, when he got absolutely tuned up by Pete Alonso hitting a home run off of him, I still stand by my opinion, and it's been proven somewhat right lately, that he is going to be somewhere between the middle of what he was at the beginning of the season in March and April, when he had a 2.78 ERA, 140 batting average against, nobody could hit him. And then in May, when he had a 4.08 ERA, which wasn't awful, but it was still and then 4.94 in June. Don't worry though, he's bounced back, 3.42 ERA, not accounting for yesterday's start in July. He's just been so phenomenal for so long. And here's the thing. An ace pitcher doesn't mean you go out and are an ace every single time. Right? That's great. I would love if we had Garrett Cole, or Jacob deGrom, or heck, Yamamoto when he was still healthy, or, some of those, the best pitchers in baseball type of thing. Chris Sale, Seth Lugo, apparently. That makes me sad. Sorry, guys. Might have struck a nerve there, but of course you want that. But I do think people make a mistake sometimes of jumping to conclusions with pitchers like this who are going to probably have a rough stretch, when all in all, he's still been very good. And as evidenced by some of the peripheral stats that we've seen all year, his FIP is still really good. That's a big thing. If he was getting lit up and I saw his FIP start to go up and he was walking more batters, then we can talk about it, right? But overall, he's got a FIP of 3.03 on the season so far. Like, that's amazing. This guy is an ace. Just because he's not at every time doesn't mean he's not an ace. And what else, though, let me tell you, is that watching this game, I was actually working on that aforementioned trade article about what the Padres should do at the trade deadline, and I had to finish it quickly. I only had like an hour or so, and because I was heading out to see Deadpool and Wolverine, so that's what I did. But I was focused, and I had the Social Network soundtrack. Whoever's ever seen that, it is a great white noise soundtrack. If you've got an hour and you've got to finish something, put on the Social Network soundtrack. You're going to feel like a god if you have to. You know what I mean? Use it as like your last resort. And I was doing that, and then meanwhile, I'm looking at the TV, and I'm like, I keep looking up, and wait, we're past the 7th inning? We're past the 8th inning? You know what I mean? It was really, really weird. I was nervous about that first batter. I forgot who it was exactly in the 9th. Ildemaro Vargas. I was nervous about that one because it was a long at bat, right? It was like multiple pitches, and I was just nervous. I was like, oh man, don't happen here. I will say, tiny thing, I loved how into it Cease was. After that 8th inning, he was doing like a thing, and I like that he wasn't trying to play it cool necessarily. Like, the man wanted the no-hitter, and I can understand that. And frankly, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I really love when athletes aren't like hiding from the fact that they want to achieve a career accomplishment, even if it's a personal one. There's nothing wrong with that, right? You got to be careful, right? You don't want to be like, you're down by 45 and then you hit a home run and then you're like running around the bases like you own the place. That looks bad. But all in all, I think it's weird when we have to pretend, or sometimes athletes have to pretend like, yeah, I'm just happy we won the game. It's like, nah, man, you threw a no-hitter. That's great. And Cease did not do that, but I like the way he was pounding himself. He looked into it like he wanted it.
Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and even easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
What were some of the surprises you guys saw? I think the one name when we were brainstorming this that all of us agreed on, where it was like the rookie, I wrote his name down in the slide on the side, is Trey Alexander. Like, we should just start with him. I was a big fan of his until the end of the cycle, where wasn't sure if the shot would be there, even though he's a mid-range king. What did you guys think of his game in Summer League? And he was with Denver, for those who don't know.
No surprise for Trey Alexander. Trey Alexander can hoop. It sometimes is as simple as that. Like, he was asked freshman year to fill in and play point guard after Ryan Nembhard broke his wrist. They had an impressive showing. He and Arthur Kaluma made Kansas go down to the wire when they won the championship. That was the closest game. And we all talked about, Kaluma, if he left that year, could have been a first-round pick. I think Alexander could have as well. Comes back sophomore year, plays the 2 next to Nembhard, is really, really good. Comes back junior year, plays the point guard because Nembhard transfers to Gonzaga, and he has an excellent year. 17, 5-5, plays good defense, 6'10" wingspan. I had him top 30. So the fact that he fell that far was not shocking because I saw all the boards. But I'm not shocked whatsoever. He was good in the summer league. And when he went to Denver, I think that was one of those things where his agent probably was like, you know what, we got a pretty good landing spot for you if you go undrafted. And that's probably why, at least I think it should have to be why that many teams passed up on him. But the guy can play basketball. I think there was no better landing spot in the NBA. And I'm really happy to see him thrive because, like I said, I think he could have been a first-round pick.
Yeah, I had him in the 30s. I mean, like Leaf said, he can hoop. When he didn't get drafted, I had mentioned before talking to Leaf, he probably had a number. It was like, if I don't go 35, maybe 40, just, take me out. And I'm going to assume that is what happened. And if that is, him and his agent, they look like geniuses because the guard depth in Denver is not there. They traded Reggie Jackson. He got cut. KCP got paid. So, and yeah, I'm watching film. And again, it's just Summer League. I know Rich hates Summer League and a lot of people hate Summer League, but I know he's on a 2-way right now, but I'm trying to think, does he have a legit opportunity to crack that Denver rotation? I don't know. Maybe he does, but in pick and roll, if you can make shots pick and roll, you got the best screener in the game. And Jokic, I mean, maybe he has a chance. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I mean, Denver's guard depth isn't that good. Like, it's Jamal Murray's going to probably be running the point most of the time. Jalen Pickett's another guard. And then it's Trey Alexander. Like, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but like their roster is pretty thin right now. And this is a team that needs all their young players to hit. That includes, that's just across the board, right? They keep Zeke Naji, like he's somebody that they could have as a contributor. Deron Holmes would have been, obviously he got injured and hurt his Achilles. He's out for a while. Vlatko Konchar is coming back from injury, but like Peyton Watson needs to take a jump. Christian Brown needs to take a major jump. So not all these guys will. And because of that, I think someone could easily graduate from the 2-way, whether it's Trey Alexander or PJ Hall. I think Trey Alexander's would be a little bit more impactful given the extremely thin guard depth. It's really Jamal Murray, and they have to have Jalen Pickett take a next step as a backup. Someone correct me if I'm missing a guard, but
Strother.
Yeah, I feel like Denver maybe signed somebody recently, but I'm also at the same time like even if they did, I can't remember.
The rumor is Westbrook.
Yeah, that's right. It was Westbrook. So I missed Russell Westbrook. Somebody in there for the last minute was probably like, say Westbrook, say Westbrook. So yeah, they have Russell Westbrook, but like that's the thing though, is even then he's not much of a shooter still. If Trey Alexander can be, for example, or Jalen Pickett, like that's a big jump. But they still, like, my overarching point still stands, right? They need these young guys to take that jump, and Trey Alexander could be that bigger need.
I will say that KCP did that podcast, I think, with Paul George, or I forget who it was. It's either Paul George or Draymond or T. So one of them dudes is always doing a podcast. They do more than podcasts than we do. But they were saying that Denver ran out of gas, and you have to think Jamal Murray, he's going to be playing Olympic basketball, which means, depending on how Canada does, he'll be playing into August. Jokic is going to be playing well into August, so they're going to need some of these young guys to step up. And KCP said that the Lakers should have beat us. We were tired. And we felt like we put way too much effort, or we overexerted ourselves in the regular season because we were trying to play for seeding. And again, I think some of that comes along with them losing to Bruce Brown that year. So like me and Leaf talked about it, but like they need some of these young guys in Denver to hit. And, I think Trey Alexander is going to get his opportunity to see if he can crack the rotation. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think he plays over Pickett. If you're choosing one of those young guys that are truly in the backcourt, whereas Strother, I think, is ahead of both of them, but he's a wing to me. And he factors in with the Christian Brown, with the Peyton Watsons of the world in their rotation. I think Alexander is going to play over Pickett. I think Pickett and his development has not been at least showcased the same way. Like, you could watch him play in the summer league last year. You could watch him at times this year, and you'd be like, okay, well, Alexander seems to be the one with more juice here. And I think the way he plays, with screen navigation being one of his strengths, and James mentioned Jokic sets great screens. They're going to have an emphasis on offense when Jokic isn't on the floor. Like, they need to be able to make up the slack offensively, because, when he leaves the floor, that's the premier offensive weapon of the NBA, leaving the floor. So let's make it up in some way. And a lot of times it's caused Jamal Murray to play extra. And they talk about fatigue. I think Alexander's got a real pathway to play. And there's a couple other guys that I think were forgotten about, or later round picks, that I think show that they have clear pathways to play and will be elevated up depth charts further than what a second round or undrafted rookie typically would have based on their performances in summer league. So those are the type of things I think you can glean from summer league, because a lot of it is guesswork, but sometimes there is real, like, set in stone stuff that transpires, as opposed to, oh, you know what, he had one game where he showed a great pick and roll read. I think the consistency that maybe a Tyler Kolek showed makes me think that he can crack even Tom Thibodeau's rigid rotation, for instance, or Kashad Johnson and all the effort he put forth on the Heat. I think there's a chance that he plays actual minutes as a rookie on the Miami Heat, which is something that most people would scoff at if you were just to say the sentence a few weeks ago.
Yeah, not wrong. And also with Jalen Pickett, I mean, it was a little bit surprising. I mean, he didn't play well. He had single digits in every game. I think he got hurt in the last game. He only played 8.5 minutes, and I remember seeing him limp around. But 3 of 9 in his last full game in 31 minutes. He went 0 of 3 the game before. First game, he went 2 of 10. So, like, his leash is thin, especially because he's a little bit older of a prospect too. So, yeah, like, I agree. Trey Alexander could be that guy to really come in there and make that next jump for one of those two-way guys. Again, it's just like that team needs somebody to quickly come in, graduate from a two-way, be a contributor. And Trey Alexander for a while was in the 30s on my board. My big stuff was just rim finishing, and he kind of showed that it wasn't a major issue with better spacing. I could see it translating right away. I think it's that simple. Like, he could easily graduate if the depth is poor and there's injuries in front of him. He's going to have an easy path into NBA minutes.
No football, no NBA, no problem with FanDuel. With baseball, the Olympics, WNBA should be back soon. There's plenty to dive into over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. The Jacksonville Jaguars, despite their offseason moves, are right on the playoff bubble. FanDuel has the Jags plus 118 to make the playoffs, as well as the second best odds to win the AFC South at plus 270. The Houston Texans are division favorites, plus 105. If you're a Texans fan, like our editor, Lance Daw, you may look at Houston's over-under. Their win total set at 9.5. So what are you waiting for? Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the moves that make the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
The Raiders are pissed off, and they had no problem speaking on it.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast.
Just my overall thoughts on what I saw on the practice field on Thursday as we continue to expect to see this team ramp up. They'll be back on the practice field today. We'll actually talk to head coach Antonio Pierce before practice around 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. If you want to hear it, you can hear it live on Raider Nation Radio 920, the morning tailgate. We'll run that live in its entirety. But excited about, again, them just continuing to ramp up and get ready for Tuesday when they'll have the pads on for the first time. But I thought Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator who is going into his third year as a DC with the Raiders, I do believe if the Raiders defense plays as well as I think they're going to play this year, he'll probably be gone after this year because somebody's going to hire him as a head coach. And shout out to Patrick Graham because he does want to be a head coach in the National Football League. And what better way to do it than lead a defensive team, a defensive unit to be even better than they were last year. I keep calling them bloodthirsty Pirates. I definitely think that that's what they're going to be, and he's the leader of the whole side of the ball. So I'm excited about what he could bring, but he really set the tone as far as I was concerned on Thursday when he met with us, and he was very, just as a matter of fact approach to his presser. So check out Patrick Graham. He was asked questions about, the unit coming back and having all the starters coming back outside of one in the addition to Christian Wilkins and, just how they could build off what they did last year and just love his approach. Here's a couple follow-ups as well. But here's Patrick Graham, just a short portion of what he had to say on Thursday, as far as I'm concerned, setting the tone for the practice.
So many guys back from last year and you obviously having the system back and everything else. Like, how far advanced do you feel right now? First day of training camp is last year.
So first things first, last year, coming back, none of that matters at all. Again, the fact that we have familiarity with each other, there's a positive there. But in terms of how it's going to play out in the 2024 season, none of that stuff matters. And the beauty of it is they understand that. They understand. I get the question, but they understand that. Everything that we accomplished this year in 2024 is going to be earned starting with what's going on that field right now and during training camp as we develop our fundamentals, start developmental fundamentals in terms of the run game, work on the communication because there are some new pieces. But in terms of trying to look back and see how that's going to play into this year, if we do that, and they're not doing that, but if we did do that, that would be a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Patrick, Jacorian Bennett seems pretty determined to win the starting job and to be an asset for you guys. What version of Jacorian Bennett have you seen throughout OTAs and now here in training camp?
You're seeing a young player mature in terms of his approach, similar to what I said earlier. And he's determined because he's an NFL football player. These are young men that made decisions when they were young to try to get to this level. And he's been determined all his life. And I would assume it would be like that in any other walk that he decides to do after football. But he's just focused. They're all focused right now. They understand what we're trying to accomplish. They're all focused right now. And the fun thing that AP's created is this environment to get away from everybody, go away for training camp, work together, be around each other a ton, and you can just see a focus in their eyes.
You had Jack Jones for a short amount of time, small sample size, but you saw production. What is his next step in the evolution of his game?
Same thing that Max preaches every day, same thing that AP's preaching. Get 1% each day. That's if you look too far ahead, I get it. The excitement of training camp, the excitement of the season. You know, it's July 5th, and people ask me, sending me text messages about when the season starts. So, can I enjoy my vacation first? And plus, there's the internet. But I get why everybody's excited. But if we got to get better every day, that's where it starts. So whether it's Jack, whether it's Christian, whether it's Max, whether it's me, you know, I made a mistake on the script today. I'm pissed about that right now. If you can tell my tone, because I tell these guys to be on it, and I messed it up. But 1% every day. That's what we're trying to do.
I thought that was great. I really did. I mean, you know, he's talking about he's angry at himself for, you know, messing up the script and not doing what he's supposed to do. And he said, hey, I get on guys for messing things up. I got to, you know, get on myself and hold myself accountable for messing things up. And you could tell by my tone. And, you know, he wasn't mad at me, but I just love that he was open and honest about the situation, right? And, you know, that kind of intensity, you know, it just really, if your coaches are intense like that, and intense in a respectful way, not intense where they're trying to intimidate you, but just, hey, look, intense. As a matter of fact, attention to detail, let's go get it done. So on the practice field, after they finally hit the field, I thought the defense did some really good things. Jacorian Bennett, I thought he made a really nice play on the ball. And obviously his training camp and preseason is going to be big for JB as he's fighting for a starting corner spot across from Jack Jones. But one of the things that drives me crazy is when corners don't track or turn and look and track the ball. And in the red zone on Thursday, the Raiders had 2 interceptions, and one was made by JB, even though he didn't come up with the interception. You know, the Gardner Minshew threw a lob into the end zone, and JB was with the wide receiver. He turned, located the ball, jumped, elevated, hit it at its high point, and hit it and deflected it. And Trayvon Merrick eventually came down with the interception. So that was an interception in the end zone, but a nice play for Jacorian Bennett. He needs to continue to play with confidence. As long as he plays with confidence, he's going to be really good. He's got the speed, he's got the skill set, but what happened in his rookie year, he lost a lot of confidence. But a lot of people in that organization, inside the building, the Raiders building, have high hopes for JB this year, and they think that he could be really good. And then Marcus Epps, he jumped a route that Gardner Minshew threw, and that would have been a pick six, right? He just read it like a book, jumped the route, and boom, took it to the house, right? Pick six right there. So the couple of good plays right there for the defense. They still look like they were flying around pretty well. Thought the defensive line did some really good things against the offensive line. Max Crosby is still fast, right? There was a time I was standing on the sideline watching Max. I was like, damn, did he get faster? It almost looked like he got faster, but there's multiple guys that are getting back. It's not just Max, right? Christian Wilkins is doing his thing from the defensive tackle spot. Kuntz is having his way. Tyree Wilson is looking good. Like, the whole defensive line is doing exactly what we expect the defensive line to do, and that makes everyone else's job easier. Something that Robert Spillane said after the practice, and he met with us, and he was talking about he just wants to be great at 1/11th of the defensive side of the ball, right? Because there's 11 guys on defense, so he's one of them. He just wants to be great at his position, let the other 10 guys be great at their position, which will make, you know, the whole defense a really solid unit. He said, they've got to trust me, and I've got to be able to trust them. The guys in front of me have to know that, you know, have to trust me to have their back. And I've got to be able to trust the guys behind me to have my back. And they've got to trust that I'm going to do the right thing. But he used that trust word quite a bit. And, you know, just talking about his excitement level for just being able to go out there and continuing to grow. And it's almost like he was built to be a Raider, man. He just seems the part, right? And even Patrick Graham in his press conference before practice said that Robert Spillane is so important. He's basically him on the field. And they basically have sit-down conversations where it's just Patrick Graham and Robert Spillane, and just trying to understand Patrick Graham's mindset, Robert Spillane's mindset. So Robert's out there on the field. He can relay the message as Patrick Graham is thinking the message, right? As Patrick Graham wants everything executed, Robert Spillane's able to go out there and direct traffic the way that he's supposed to direct traffic. And Patrick Graham loves having him as that middle linebacker, as that linebacker with the green dot. As far as offensively go, it wasn't anything fantastic. Both quarterbacks were just okay. Right, they did some good things. They did some, like I said, okay things. O'Connell had a touchdown pass to Harrison Bryant, and really it was a great catch by Harrison in the back of the end zone. He laid out and made the catch, and it was a pretty pretty good fastball that O'Connell threw. Minshew hit Jacoby Myers for a touchdown, a little short underneath route, and Jacoby made a little jump step here, jump step there, and boom, got into the end zone. So that was a couple touchdowns right there. But the guy that I'm looking forward to making some plays, and I know it's only a couple days into training camp so far, Trey Tucker, the speedster, the guy who sounded like he worked on his hands and his feet a lot throughout the course of the offseason. He put two balls on the ground. One from O'Connell and one from Minshew. Both of them would have been touchdowns. So that's something that he's got to clean up. Again, not panicking. It's only 2 practices under his belt so far, but you want to start developing those habits. You want to make sure that you're hauling those balls in. You're completing the process. You're catching the ball. You're getting to the end zone. You can't drop them on the ground. You can't let them, hit the turf. When you miss a big opportunity, normally that big opportunity doesn't come back. Right? When you miss it, you miss it. So, Trey Tucker, he's a guy that I'm looking at thinking that, he has an opportunity special with, all of the like Jalen Guyton, the wide receiver being on the PUP list, Michael Gallup retiring, Keelan Doss, again, he's a good story, but I don't think anyone thinks that he's going to be a wide receiver that's going to get a whole lot of reps and a whole lot of catches and be a big factor offensively. So Trey Tucker has the ultimate opportunity. He's just got to take advantage of it and make the most of it. For the day during 11-on-11, Gardner Minshew was 8 for 11, had a touchdown and 2 interceptions. Aiden O'Connell was 6 for 11 and had a touchdown. So, again, nothing that was overwhelming, nothing that was fantastic. The defense still looks really good. They're, flying around. They're working a lot. They spent a lot of time. I mean, they probably had it felt like 5 or 6 sessions on special teams alone. And again, they're working on that quite a bit. They'll do a session, a team session, then all of a sudden special teams. Then they'll do individual drills, special teams. Then they'll do some other drills, special teams. Like they did a lot of special teams on Thursday, and I expect them to continue to do that. But we'll get a full recap of how AP feels about the first 2 days of practice. What does he think about, his players being pretty angry about those ESPN rankings? Jack Jones speaking on it. Obviously, Robert Spillane spoke on it as well. And we'll also ask him about the whole, the whole Kermit the Frog, Patrick Mahomes thing that's gone viral, that everyone thinks that, okay, now the Raiders poked the bear, and, get AP's thoughts on that as well. He probably won't say much on it, but it'll be asked for sure. At some point, somebody, somehow, maybe it'll be me, maybe it'll be Vinny. Usually Vinny leads us off, and so he'll probably ask that question just because he usually leads us off, and sometimes he'll give 2 or 3 follow-ups real quick before anyone gets a chance to get the question in. So somebody, I guarantee, will ask AP about the whole Kermit the Frog thing, and then also ask him about the rankings and how Max Crosby stood up and basically told the team, hey, this is what they think about you. This is what they think about us. What you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it?
Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and even easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
Well, it was Kershaw Day for the first time in a long, long time.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It was a big game coming in for a few reasons. Clayton Kershaw's first start in almost 10 months is a big deal. Obviously a big deal for the Dodgers, big deal for me as a Clayton Kershaw fan. Everydayers know Clayton Kershaw is my favorite player of all time. So exciting time for that. Big game for the Dodgers because coming into the series, it was a difference between winning the series or splitting the series with the Giants. And, a 4-game series is hard to win. It's hard to win 3 out of 4. And after last night's game, the ugly taste in the mouth after yesterday's game, it was an important game for the Dodgers to win. And all in all, I mean, it went about as well as anybody could have hoped for. And that's a big deal. Kershaw went 4 innings. We'll focus this first segment on Kershaw. I'm going to try to track the chat too. Like I said, Vince will be in here with me in just a minute. So I'll try to keep an eye on the chat while I am talking. But, once Vince is in, it's easier for the one of us who isn't talking to keep an eye on the chat. But Kershaw coming in, they didn't give an exact pitch count. Dave Roberts said he hoped to get him into the 5th inning. But looking at his rehab starts, eyeballing, it was like they're not going to let him throw more than about 80 pitches. And Kershaw himself had said last week he wasn't built up yet. And that's why after his last rehab start, he said, I want to do whatever's best for the team. So if it's not going to help the team, me not being built up to go deep in the game, I don't want to come back yet. And they made the decision to bring him back. And I was happy for the decision. But we knew he wasn't going to go very deep in the game, which is why yesterday's game was such it's not like the Dodgers punted that game. Yohan Ramirez has had success at times this year. But yeah, yesterday's game was clearly an example of you can't play to win all 162 games. And if the Dodgers had played to win that game last night, like going all out to win it, they probably would have lost this game. And they probably would have lost yesterday's game too. They were already trailing, so it's frustrating as a fan when the team doesn't, when you put Yohan Ramirez on the mound when he's lousy. But the fact is everybody knew going into that game that it was going to be Yohan Ramirez's last day on the team. So might as well get as much out of him as we can. That ended up not being very much. But anyway, what all that boils down to is the Dodgers knew that Clayton Kershaw wasn't going to go deep in this game. He ended up throwing about 75 pitches in 4 innings and, not as clean and crisp, especially that 2nd inning when he gave up the 2 runs, but also he struck out 3 batters in a row after getting himself into trouble. So that was in some ways his best inning from a fan standpoint, from a going forward standpoint. That was a big deal. And so getting through 4 innings was huge. And then the Dodgers just had to battle to get through the rest of the game, ended up using 6 of their 8 relievers. The only guys they didn't use were Anthony Bonda and Ryan Yarbrough, both of whom